London, 1980s. A city caught between decay and rebirth, grit and glamour, tradition and rebellion. Imagine stepping into a time machine and arriving in the heart of this era, where the streets hum with tension, creativity, and transformation. This is not the polished London of today. This is a raw, electric metropolis shaped by political upheaval, cultural revolution, and the everyday resilience of its people. In this AI reconstruction, we peel back the layers of history to rebuild what London truly felt like during one of its most defining decades. The 1980s in London began under the heavy shadow of economic struggle. The late 1970s had already left scars, high inflation, unemployment, and widespread strikes. But the early years of the new decade intensified these pressures. Entire industries were collapsing. Manufacturing jobs that once sustained working-class communities vanished rapidly, especially in East London and the Docklands. Walking through neighborhoods like Hackney, Tower Hamlets, or Southwark, you have seen boarded-up shops, graffiti-covered walls, and a sense of uncertainty hanging in the air. This wasn't just economic decline. It was a psychological shift. Families who had relied on stable employment for generations were suddenly forced into a new, precarious reality. Yet amid this hardship, London did not stand still. It reacted. It evolved. One of the most powerful forces shaping the city at this time was the rise of youth subcultures. Punk, which had exploded in the late 1970s, still echoed through the streets, but was now morphing into new forms: post-punk, new wave, and the early seeds of alternative rock. If you walked down Camden High Street, you'd encounter leather jackets, spiked hair, and DIY fashion statements that rejected mainstream norms. Music wasn't just entertainment. It was resistance. Lyrics spoke of frustration, identity, and rebellion against authority. Venues like small underground clubs and pubs became sanctuary for expression, where unknown bands could electrify crowds and spark movements. At the same time, another sound was rising from the city's multicultural neighborhoods. Reggae, dub, and lovers rock flowed through areas like Brixton, carried by the Caribbean communities who had made London their home. These sounds weren't isolated. They blended with emerging electronic beats and hip-hop influences, giving birth to entirely new genres. The streets themselves became stages. Boomboxes blasted music, breakdancers performed on sidewalks, and graffiti artists turned urban decay into vibrant canvases. This fusion of cultures gave London a unique sonic identity that would influence global music for decades. But to understand 1980s London, you cannot ignore the political climate. The policies of the government at the time reshaped the city dramatically. Privatization, cuts to public spending, and a focus on free market economics created deep divisions. While some areas experienced investment and growth, others were left behind. The contrast was stark. In West London, wealth and affluence were becoming more visible. Boutiques, fine dining, and luxury lifestyles flourished. Meanwhile, in the east and inner-city boroughs, poverty and neglect persisted. This growing inequality fueled anger and unrest. One of the most defining moments of the decade came in 1981 with the Brixton riots. Tensions between the police and the local community, particularly among black residents, had been building for years. Aggressive policing tactics and systemic discrimination pushed the situation to a breaking point. For several days, Brixton erupted into chaos. Cars burned, buildings were damaged, and confrontations filled the streets. It wasn't just a riot. It was a cry for justice and recognition. Similar unrest followed in other parts of the city, highlighting deep-rooted issues that could no longer be ignored. Through AI reconstruction, we can visualize the intensity of these moments. The smoke-filled streets, the flashing blue lights, and the raw emotion etched on people's faces. Despite these conflicts, the 1980s also marked the beginning of London's transformation into a global financial powerhouse. The Big Bang deregulation of the financial markets in 1986 revolutionized the City of London. Traditional trading floors gave way to computerized systems, and international investors flooded in. The skyline began to change as modern office buildings rose, signaling a new era of economic ambition. Canary Wharf, which had once been derelict docklands, started its journey toward becoming a symbol of corporate power. This shift didn't just affect finance. It reshaped the city's identity. London was no longer just a historic capital. It was becoming a global hub of commerce and innovation. Transportation in 1980s London reflected both its history and its challenges. The underground system, already decades old, was essential but often unreliable. Graffiti-covered trains rattled through tunnels, and delays were common. Double-decker buses dominated the streets, their red exteriors a constant in a changing city. Black cabs navigated the complex roadways with unmatched knowledge, long before GPS existed. Traffic congestion was a daily struggle, especially in central areas. Yet, despite these inconveniences, the city kept moving. There was a rhythm to it, a chaotic, imperfect rhythm that defined urban life. Fashion in 1980s London was a visual explosion of identity. Power dressing became a symbol of ambition, especially in the financial sector. Sharp suits, bold shoulder pads, and confident silhouettes reflected a culture obsessed with success. Meanwhile, on the streets, individuality ruled. Vintage clothing, thrift store finds, and handmade pieces allowed people to express themselves in ways that defied convention. Markets like Camden and Portobello became hotspots for unique styles, attracting locals and tourists alike. Fashion wasn't dictated from the top down. It was built from the ground up, shaped by the people who wore it. Television and media also played a significant role in shaping the era. With the rise of new channels and programming, British culture reached wider audiences. Music videos, in particular, became a powerful medium, blending visual storytelling with sound. Shows reflected both the struggles and aspirations of the time, capturing the essence of everyday life. Advertising grew more sophisticated, tapping into the desires of a generation that was increasingly influenced by consumer culture. As the decade progressed, signs of renewal became more visible. Urban regeneration projects began to take shape, aiming to revitalize neglected areas. While not without controversy, these efforts laid the groundwork for the London we know today. New businesses emerged, creative industries flourished, and the city's reputation as a cultural capital strengthened. The art scene thrived. Galleries, theaters, and independent cinemas pushed boundaries and challenged audiences. Creativity was everywhere, often born from the very struggles that defined the decade. Socially, the 1980s were a time of shifting attitudes. Conversations around race, gender, and identity became more prominent, though progress was uneven. Activism grew stronger, with communities organizing to demand change. The LGBTQ+ community, in particular, faced immense challenges during the AIDS crisis, but also demonstrated remarkable resilience and solidarity. These movements, though often marginalized at the time, played a crucial role in shaping a more inclusive future. By the end of the decade, London had undergone a profound transformation. The scars of the early 1980s were still visible, but so were the signs of growth and reinvention. The city had adapted, absorbing influences from around the world while redefining itself. It was no longer just a place of tradition. It was a dynamic, ever-evolving metropolis. In this AI reconstruction, we don't just see buildings and streets. We feel the atmosphere, the hum of traffic, the distant echo of music, the tension in the air during moments of unrest, and the excitement of cultural breakthroughs. Every detail tells a story. The flicker of neon lights in Soho, the crowded markets of Camden, the quiet resilience of communities rebuilding their lives. These are the elements that bring 1980s London back to life. This decade matters because it set the stage for everything that followed. The economic policies, cultural movements, and social changes of the 1980s continue to influence London today. To understand the modern city, you have to understand this era, the struggles, the creativity, the contradictions. It was a time when London was forced to confront its challenges and, in doing so, discovered new possibilities. So as you watch this reconstruction, imagine yourself there, walking through the streets, hearing the sounds, seeing the faces. This is London in the 1980s. Not perfect, not polished, but undeniably alive.